a zone of boys. All right, everybody, welcome to the 9 Years Podcast, episode 225. I am Nick Draper. I am joined by the face of the BBC Sport website, Mr. Stuart Deacons, and we have lots of things to talk about this week. Chiefly, we're going to talk about football, specifically AFC Wimbledon, including a review of our Fleetwood victory, a look ahead to our game with Accrington on the weekend. We're going to be looking at some of the finances, knocking about some of the decisions of facing Premier League and Football League clubs, and we're going to be talking about the latest news on our stadium and our return to Plough Lane. Whose 9 is it anyway will come up at the very end of the show. But to begin with, we'll start with a shout out and a call out. The shout out is nice and easy this week. I mentioned it last week that we need to get on top of what the ladies are doing, and I have been checking them out. Huge 5-0 victory last week against Stevenage ladies. Goals from Liz Berkeley, formerly of Saved by the Bell. Katie Stanley back in the goals straight away with 2. A debut goal from Rebecca Carter and Jessica Lurie as well. The ladies had another game in the week. They drew 2-2 with Kent, the Kent Football Club.
They don't believe in towns. They're just going to just chuck the county at us. Can I just quickly say, very, very quickly, I've seen the goals from the Ashley Kent game. Anyone gets a chance, the keeper, penalty, keeper decides to move to a right, then realises the ball goes down the middle, dives, parries it into her own goal. Classic.
Very frustrated. She banged the turf in sheer frustration after letting that one in. But yeah, it was 2-2 in the week following that 5-0 victory. The ladies undefeated so far this season after 3 games in the league. So well done, ladies. If you're interested in sponsoring the ladies with some bench coats to keep them warm at half time because they're not allowed to go inside the changing rooms because of COVID-19 regulations, then give them a shout. They're on Twitter at AFCW_ladies, but a fantastic start to the season for them. Call out this week, Stu. We're going to expand more on my issues with football this season later in the podcast, but because of my issues with football this season and the fact there are no crowds and other things, which we will come on to, it's very difficult to give many call-outs at the moment, and specifically, I couldn't pick a moment from a game or anything like this. So I've gone for something completely random this week for my call-out, and it is for branded food products. Because I was buying tomato ketchup in Sainsbury's last week, and I always just buy Sainsbury's own tomato ketchup. It's 65p. And then it was next to the Heinz tomato ketchup, which was £1.75. How on earth is there a £1.10 differential between essentially ketchup that tastes the same?
Do you know what is interesting? I was chatting to my wife about this because I don't mind some branded stuff. So I'm a little bit like baked beans to me, Heinz, but then I've had stuff that she's bought that it's not branded, and I've not even realised the difference. But what she was saying, we shop in Tesco's, and of course other supermarkets are available.
That's it, Sainsbury's and Tesco's, that's it, nothing else.
But she was saying to me, Tesco's have got their own branded stuff. I'm going to call it now. Apparently, it's made in the same factory as some of the branded stuff.
See,
how does that work?
I'm not sure, because I thought that all the supermarkets' own label stuff is essentially the same. They just put a different label on it. I could be wrong, and they come from the same factories, but I mean, it's more than likely it all comes from the same place. Who knows? I think eggs come from the same place, for example.
Well, yeah, I think they do. But anyway, all the shopping's... By the way, obviously with this pandemic, people are panic buying again. So we struggled with our toilet roll. We had to get a cheaper sort of toilet roll. That's wrong.
Toilet roll is one of those things that the cheaper ones you can get are like tracing paper. Do you remember in schools back in the day where it's just like you'd be wiping your ass with tracing paper? Like, what is this doing? It doesn't even pick anything up. Like you're just smearing it across your backside, basically.
Might as well get some newspaper.
You might as well have done. And we won't mention which newspaper we might choose in that situation. Let's keep this apolitical. But yeah, so I would just say to everyone listening, branded products are very, very expensive, and I cannot really judge when they justify the extra expense and when they don't. There is one exception to this rule. Heinz spaghetti in tomato ketchup, the little tins you get. The Sainsbury's own brand of that is just awful. I was going to say a rude word there. So that's the exception. That's where I'll pay the extra. But £1.10 extra for tomato. Anyway, lunacy. You're listening to Middle Aged Hour on Radio 9 Years podcast, and we'd like to thank the patrons this week that we have yet to give a shout out to, and there are many, so I'm going to scan down the list. Thank you for your £5. You can sign up for extra and early access content on patreon.com/9YRS podcast, as have many people already. And this week we're going to say a big thank you to number 15, Terry Westgate, number 25, Nicholas Harvey Lees Green, and scrolling down the list, number 69, so it was his choice, Max Williams.
Oh, good choice.
69. I wonder if any footballer has ever had 69 on their back of their shirt. It's bound to have happened, because you've got some crazy ones that used to happen, like 87s and stuff like this. And who's the Liverpool player? Like Trent Alexander-Arnold, isn't it?
66, isn't it?
66, which is...
I think it's 66.
Yeah, I think it is, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. When it first started, I used to think, why do you want to squad another member? Beckham to 23, wasn't it? But I get a bit bored now if I don't have a really random number. I think even one time someone had a radio station's frequency as a number on the back of their shirt. So there's loads of stuff, isn't there?
I can't remember who that was, but it was in France or Belgium or somewhere. That's why we voted to leave. Squad numbers. We will talk about the Fleetwood win, everyone. But squad numbers, as maybe you just realise, I know I get mocked for this quite a lot because I'm living in the past. But, God, 1 to 11. Do you know what? I was watching a video the other day of when Man United, they'd won the Premier League and their last game of the season was at Selhurst against us. So they'd already collected the trophy and their final game was with us. They beat us 2-1. Brian Robson scored. And, there were no names on the back of the shirt, so it was just 1 to 11. I thought, beautiful. I want to go back to those days. Also, I was watching highlights of a 5-1 win over Millwall in a League Cup second round first leg. Do you remember when there were two-legged affairs back in the day? Yeah,
I remember going. That was when it was two-legged. I remember going to Millwall. That was one of my funniest moments, actually. I went to the return one. I think we won 4-1, or something like that. Yeah. And when we scored the fourth, they just started singing "The Millwall fans will never make the station." And we all looked around nervously laughing at each other, thinking, they're probably not wrong.
But you know what? The funny thing you say that, because I was just checking up to see the team lineups because it popped up on WAP on one of these On This Day things. I mean, totally coincidentally, I was watching this earlier in the week and then today's On This Day. So I just looked it up further. Do you know what the attendance was at the New Den on that evening?
There wasn't many. Well,
3,500. Yeah.
Yeah, but it felt more.
Yeah, I can imagine, to be fair. Stuart Carlsdale scored in both legs. And I missed those two-legged League Cup games. Early season, normally in sort of the first or second week after you've just gone back to school. And there's a little bit less pressure about those games. They're just enjoyable. They're just fun. Football used to be so much more fun.
Yeah, and you're right about the subs. I watched, obviously, when the pandemic...
The subs, yeah. You might have to explain that one to the listeners.
Yeah, so I remember before the pandemic, there was like classic matches. And I think I saw a game, it might have been Liverpool, Man U, and there were no subs, and there was one sub. And then do you remember they went from one sub to two subs to then having three subs, but one of them had to be a goalkeeper.
Yep.
There was loads of things, and it gradually... And look at us now, in the Champions League this year, they're going to use 5 subs out of, I don't know how many you can sit on the bench, as many as you can get on the bench.
Yeah.
It's... Do you know what? The old days were the greatest one.
Everything was better in the olden days, yes. My point, Stu's raised the subs there because I raised this point last week, and it actually will bring us nicely onto the Fleetwood game, where I made the point where finances are really stretched and everyone's tightening their belts across the board in football right now. Think about this logically. We have to have an extra man that goes up with the squad to Fleetwood, as well as the 7 subs. So we have a 19th man. So we've got 19 players, 11 starters, 3 subs that can actually play. So every time we travel away from home, we're taking 5 players that are going to play 0 football. So we're going to pay for them. They're going to pay for their travel, potentially on occasions going to pay for overnight stays. For players that are going to play 0 minutes of football, why in League One do we need 7 substitutes on the bench? Is it not just encouraging clubs to spend money that perhaps they could get away with? Again, I was watching another game from like the mid-90s. We lost at home to Man United. We lost 4-2. And 3 subs. Three subs, like, that's all you need. Why are we spending money on... I don't understand why we're doing it. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Do you know what? I've never really thought of it that way until we were just chatting before we started. With the economy and the way it's going in football, it's really made me think about money and cost of why do we do things. When you raise this, it really got me thinking, because you're right, you know, and if I remember properly, when it went to 7 subs, even 5 subs, I think the comment was, well, they're not going to get any football, so they're going to sit on the bench and not play. So reserve team football at that time was really good. So if you got in the squad, you done well. If not, you played in reserves and you got some game time. And it's sort of changed now, isn't it, where you seem to have these behind closed door games at the training ground now. A lot of clubs seem to arrange these games to get their people time. When you think, I think you're right. Is there any point, any point sending these people out the motorway? We went up by train to Fleetwood and got a train back. That still costs you money. And you're right. Do we need all those? We should be able to supplement ourselves with the academy. We've got some kids that have gone out on loan, haven't they, to like Merstrom and Carl Shorten. Hey, look, if we get desperate, we bring them in. But you're right. But then it's the whole thing, isn't it? It's the reset of football. That's what needs to happen. And you raised a very good point. When you got me thinking, there was actually no point. It really was a good point.
There are just many things, I think, if we were to ask the reasoning and the logic behind them, what are they? And 7 subs, for example, somebody mentioned, well, it gives you more tactical flexibility and it makes games more interesting because it gives you more options. And I'm thinking, but you don't need 7 subs to do that. If we had, let's say if we said 5 subs, for example, and you can use 3 of them, a manager might decide to fill his bench with a goalkeeper and 4 strikers. And then he might think to manage his squad in a way that you've got players that are on the field that can play in a variety of positions. And we could manage that with our squad easily. We've already seen Luke O'Neill's playing centre-half, and we'd have never have thought when he first joined us that we'd see him playing at centre-half. I'm sure Paul Calumbai, we've seen play in midfield previously. We've seen Will Nightingale do it. Callum Riley can play at centre-half. Shane McLaughlin can play in midfield. He's playing full-back at the moment. Dylan Connolly was a winger that we played up front because we wanted to fit him in. So you can be tactically flexible without needing to have, like, as will happen, because these things always happen. Once you open the bridge to something, or open the gate to something, I suppose you could open a bridge as well, people start, a trickle comes through and then it becomes a flood. And it will become 11 subs. It will become 11 substitutes at one stage, and then Pep Guardiola will argue for rolling subs at some point, and who knows where it all ends up. Yeah,
and you're right. And when it went to 5 subs, you didn't have to have a goalkeeper. So I think it went from 3 to 5. I remember Neil Warnock never used to put a sub goalkeeper. We just went, you know what, if we have to, we'd chuck a kid in goal, or the tallest person in goal, or we put Vinny in goal before. Do you remember when he was up in Newcastle? Played the clown and actually, sort of side of it. The irony is, and if we go to international football very quickly, now international football, the whole squad is on the bench, isn't it? Yeah. So you can pick from the whole squad. But I remember World Cups many years ago that people would go in a 23-man squad and would never see the pitch. They wouldn't even get anywhere near the pitch, and they would go. I think Dave Bessett went to a World Cup and didn't see anything. So
90, didn't he?
Yeah. So it's all changing, isn't it? And yeah, you're right. And let's not kid ourselves about this. For 5 subs, it's already gone to the Champions League. It will filter the way through. The Football League, the Premier League didn't want to accept it. It wasn't the fact that the big clubs wanted it. The smaller clubs didn't. But it will get through. And you're right. Once it comes through, 3 p.m. kickoffs on Saturdays. We've opened the floodgates now. It ain't gonna go back.
Well, that was going to be on my next point, and I think let's have this conversation now because we're knee deep into it anyway now. Saturday 3 o'clock kickoffs. They've gone in the Premier League now. You're never going to get them back now that we've opened that gate because of the COVID situation. Every single Premier League game is televised live. You telling me that when fans are allowed back in stadiums, they're going to withdraw that? No. Sky are going to be like, well, now we've got it. People are going to expect it, and they need people to pay subscription fees so they can continue to afford to pay the rights for it. So that's gone. That has gone, and that will never return now. That's gone, and it sucks. And we will be the last vestiges of it in League One and League Two, where for the majority of games will kick off at 3 o'clock on Saturday. But you've already seen again the League Cup, because of Sky, teams are playing on Thursdays, which means their weekend games have to be moved to Sundays. This is happening more and more often. It's a death knell, and people will say, well, this is progress. Not for me. Not for me. I think Saturday 3 p.m.s are a huge part of our football culture. and it's a whole part. There's such a community feeling that goes with it as well. I mean, some of my favourite memories are from travelling up and down the country. You meet fans from other clubs as everyone was on the move on a Saturday for a 3:00 kickoff.
Yep.
And I'd remember getting on. I remember when I was living in Luton, and I'd be travelling back up to Luton with fans of all these clubs that had been everywhere, like Leeds coming back from Portsmouth and places like this. And Arsenal and Spurs fans, and you're all having chats and conversations about football and stuff like that. And that sense of community has now gone. These conversations, people will say, well, now people have these interactions on Twitter. They don't. No one has a conversation on Twitter. People just argue and shout insults at each other. And these things, I know I'm getting all philosophical, but community spirit is on its way out. And you might think I might be catastrophizing the death of 3:00 kickoffs, but it all feeds into this thing. And when you used to have one live game a week, a Super Sunday game, you might have a Monday night game, but not every week. It actually brought football fans together because there'd be one game to watch on TV and people would do it. Now, so many games on TV that in reality, I think the only people watching the games are the fans of those clubs at the moment. So again, it's more separating out of people.
Yeah, but do you know what? The thing with Saturday 3:00, the reason it was always brought in was to protect the smaller clubs. It was it was a protected time so that the clubs that kicked off on Saturday, League One, League Two, Conference, would get crowds. So it was done to protect them. So again, those protection things are going gradually, aren't they? But I sort of sense in a way now you've got the armchair fan and you've got the physical fan. So what I mean by that is I laughed, I think I mentioned it last week, that the Asian, part of the Asian TV were going to claim a refund from the Premier League because the kick-off times that had been changed meant that their viewers couldn't watch them because of the time difference. And it made me chuckle thinking, we've gone into this broadcasting rights. And the reason why the broadcasting rights are so expensive, or so, for the clubs, they can earn a lot of money, is because it's international. We've gone there. So we're now catering for other fans now. And the kickoff times are suited for those. They're not suited for the fans. So as you were rightly saying, fans going up and down the motorway. I remember years ago, Bournemouth fans stopping at the stage. I think they were League Two at the time. And they were saying, I think we've got a really good chance of going up. And I was chuckling 3 or 4 years later in the Premier League. But you're right, you used to meet fans. But I think you've got fans that go to games and they don't want to be going down the motorway at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. They actually want the better kickoffs. But actually you've got the armchair fan, don't care. The armchair fan who pays for Sky, pays for BT, who actually is enjoying that. And you have to wonder, what market are we going for? And also Amazon are going to get involved, aren't they? And Amazon are going to want the kickoff times different. And you may even get a stage, I worry, but I think we're going to get very close to a Netflix sort of style game where you just basically, you basically just pick the team you want to support. There's big problems. Let's not forget the solidarity money that's been forwarded from the Premier League, nuts. It's nothing compared to what they get. Already got it already, so we haven't got it at the end of the season. The TV money is going to be the one that's going to kill football for the lower leagues.
We were going to talk about these solidarity payments. That was on the agenda, so you've mentioned it there. Because we are looking at spending, we're talking about Football League clubs potentially going out of business because they've not got crowds coming into the turnstiles or coming through the turnstiles. And part of the conversation has been, can the Premier League help to fund these clubs or give them some money to help them out a little bit? And as you mentioned there, solidarity payments that do come every season, we've been given an advance on those. Yeah. So there's that's already been pulled into play, and that's already been spent on players' wages and players' contracts. And I don't know, as I said to you, we're in a lucky position. We're not going to be as affected or badly affected as other clubs, but we're still in a position where we've spent money. We have spent money on our playing budget this year, and it's by all accounts, it's less than it was last year, but it's still a fair amount of cash that we have spent. Keep in mind, we've not taken a penny in ticket revenue so far this season. Do you think the Premier League should be giving more cash to clubs that will be in danger? We're talking, I'm imagining clubs like Stevenage and Morecambe's and teams like this. Although, saying that, we're playing Accrington this week, and I was having a look beforehand. They've clearly reduced the size of their squad this season quite dramatically to accommodate their loss of income. So there are clubs like Accrington that have taken it upon themselves to reduce outgoings. Should the Premier League be helping out those clubs, Oxford, for example, that haven't taken that approach and have continued to spend despite not having any ticket money?
I'm a bit conflicted on what I think, actually. I sort of, in half of me thinks that the Premier League have for years stitched up lower league clubs. You know, we let's not forget about the EPPP, which is the professional side of it, where we now can't get anywhere. You know, clubs are not bothering academies now because they just can't get the fees that they used to. So the Premiership have done so much. My worry is, I believe the government should help us out. And I know it's taxpayers' money, but I worry the Premier League wants so many conditions on it. And it's like a blackmail. It's like a blackmail. They know we're desperate. I don't think they should be helping out the Championship clubs as much. I can understand their grievance with the fact that why should they be supporting the clubs below them and you know, I get that. And the Championship is spending stupid money, but definitely League One and League Two. But it's all in balance now because you've now got the government saying they're going to help out National League clubs and National League South and National League North. So you've now got a situation where us in League One are not getting support. Taxpayers' money is being helped out for the National League so they can play. Below that, you've got crowds that are allowed in. It's just, you know, we all need money. That's the problem. And I don't want the Premier League helping out because I don't want the conditions. And we all know that what that's going to be like, you know, potentially B-team games. Are they worried about someone going out of business? No, they're not. They're not. So the government should be helping us. But the government, of course, they seem to think that, you know, let's go. I don't go political, but Matt Hancock was the first one to say that the footballers should give up some of their salaries for clubs, but wouldn't do their own salary. They seem to think football is just full of money, and it should help its own. But I think the government should do because I don't want to be blackmailed into receiving money from the Premier League because they're just going to look out for their own interests.
You use the phrase the reset of football, and we do need a reset of football because whilst I agree with you, it isn't anybody else's responsibility to bail out other companies because of their financial struggles. It's in no other industry would you see. I'm trying to think of an example.
Let's go in a corner shop.
Exactly, but yeah, exactly. I was trying to think of like specific names of brands or shops that have gone out of business recently. WH Smith was not going to bail out Woolworths, for example, when Woolworths fell into financial difficulty. You wouldn't see it in any other industry. So why should we expect any different of football? I get that. I think, though, in a sporting context, should it be different? Yes. Do we live in a world that is based on hierarchies? Yes, we do. That's natural. But then the disparity is so big, it just turns your stomach a little bit. And I do look at Manchester City going out again. And I know I said this before when they spent 40 million on Nathan Ake. And I thought, what is going on? What world are we living in when you're paying £40 million for a centre-half? And then they've gone out this week and spent another £65 million on another centre-half that I've never heard of before. Someone's going to tell me he's probably some sort of Portuguese international. I've got no idea. I have no idea who this person is. And you're going to pay £65 million for him. And I just think we've lost sight of and it all comes back to what I said about fans not being in stadiums, the loss of that community feel about following football. We've completely lost sight of it because it's all about the chase for success. And in clubs like ours cases, we are guilty of this. We have gone out to build a squad to be successful, modestly successful, but still successful. Manchester City and Premier League have completely lost sight of what they're doing this for. And do you remember what was the bank that did that advert a few years ago and people sort of mocked them a little bit because it was a bank doing it, but it was all the clips of fans going into the stadiums and the old Everton fan being greeted on the turnstile as he takes his seat every week and stuff like that, showing what football's really about. And they were mocked because they were like, you're a bank, come on, you are the antithesis of community and all in it for together kind of thing. But it's right, that's what football is. That's what football means to people. And they're not, as a football fan, like you said, the difference between the armchair fan and the match-going fan is a match-going fan is always going to go. They're going to go for the atmosphere. They're going to go for those moments that live in your memory forever. You're not going because you've seen a £65 million centre-half wonderfully marshal his back four and get them pressing high up the pitch and being tactically astute and all these business, and then having Michael Richards laugh about it in a studio. No one's watching it for that. Fans are involved because they want the moments of emotion, the moments of passion, and that will come whether you pay £65 million for a centre-half or not.
Yeah, but no one's living in a real world, are they? I remember I was going to Lost Road the other week and I was listening to TalkSport, and there was a Villa fan blatantly saying we've got to spend money because we've got, and he's going, even if we finish like one place above the relegation fee, we've got to spend money. And I was sitting there thinking, I'm walking along here and I'm seeing people with masks, I know people that have reduced hours, lost money, and they're
with
not
all due
even...
respect as well, Loftus Road in Shepherd's Bush. I mean, come on, like if you're going to see people that are in real financial difficulties in that part of the world.
Yeah, and it just doesn't make sense. It's like what my ears and my eyes are saying to me doesn't correspond to the football world. And I don't know. The Premier League wanted to start. It was all about Project Restart, wasn't it? Get the games because the fans need their football. I don't know anyone who's enjoying it. I've spoke to a lot of football fans, and I know a lot of people that are not enjoying it because there's no fans there. But actually, and I heard one crazy comment actually as well, as they were saying, basically, you know, the handball. I don't want to get onto the handball law of it, but I was hearing a comment from somebody saying that we shouldn't adopt the handball law that everyone in Europe is, because ours is the best league in the world. It's got the most excitement. It's got the most best players. And I'm thinking, because it's flooded with money, it can sit in the English league. But how many English players have we got? You know, it's like a fantasy world. It's like an absolute fantasy world. And I'm ashamed sometimes. I look at the transfer fees that people are spending when this economy is in serious trouble.
Last point I will make on this, and this is going to be, you're going to think, Nick, what are you talking about? But part of it does also come with the fact that we have started to take it far too seriously. And that is why these clubs are spending these obscene amounts of monies on players and all these other things that they're doing at the top flight level. And I had a random memory talking about old games. And yes, I live in the past. I live in the 90s. Yes, of course I do. But I was remembering when we got beaten 4-2 by Leeds at Selhurst Park, and Tony Yeboah scored the greatest goal I've ever seen live in person.
Brilliant goal.
I was sat in like 4 or 5 rows from the pitch, like row 5 in a Holmesdale Road, right behind the goal. And I can still remember, I had the most vivid memory of Yeboah's goal, because for ages afterwards, the crossbar was shaking for like minutes afterwards, and you could see it shaking in front of us. But I also remember we got played off the park that day. We lost 4-2. But I think it was Alan Reeves got us a goal back to make it 4. We were 4-1 down. I think it was Alan Reeves at the far post. Knocks into an empty net, heads into the empty net. And he looks up at us because we're right behind the goal. So he's looking right at us. And he has this huge cheesy smile on his face. And he gives sort of an ironic sort of punch of the air, as if to say, yeah, this lot have played us off the park today, but we've got one back at them. And that was it. And it was like, today's game, if that had happened, the player would not smile. He'd run, pick up the ball from the back of the net and jog back to the centre circle. And it will be very serious. And afterwards, they'll be like, we're very sorry, we've let down the fans. It's a big disappointment. We must do better. Back in those days, we were just like, September, October time. Yeah, we've lost a game to a better team. That's it. We'll all go home. Yes, yay for us. We've got a goal back. We've given them a black eye at the end of it. And no one's getting angry about it. Players aren't sulking or getting depressed about it. They're just getting on with it. It's just a game.
And you know what? Just very quickly before we go on to the Fleetwood game, I was laughing at the Pompey situation. So the Pompey CEO was on Good Morning Britain this week, was just saying that, you know, they're losing about 700 grand a month through loss of gate receipts and stuff like that, and they're struggling, you know, and they've probably lost about 3 or 4 million quid. And then after they drew today, I can't think. I know what they lose. I can't think now. But
they lost in the end. Yeah,
they lost. Well, a lot of Pompey fans now want to get Jacket out and say, look, you know, come out of the club. Pompey can't afford to sack him because of the contract he's got. Amazing. But again, they're now saying, well, are they not listening to the fact that their CEO just said they're losing £700,000 a month?
That's ridiculous.
It's like in a way they just don't listen to that. It's like, no, that doesn't comprehend. We need to be better. We got to spend the money. Don't care where it comes from. Don't care we're losing all this money. It's just like living in the real world. Do you know what I mean? I love spending money, spending my own money, to be fair. Someone else's money doing better. But you know me, I love the fact that if we can invest in the squad and get better players, I look at the squad and think, have we spent too much money? I suppose I'm just valuing the money a bit better at the moment, and football isn't as important. We shouldn't be spending. I'm not saying we're spending loads of money, but where do you stop? Do you know what I mean? Like people saying, should we get any more players? No, we've got enough. We've got enough. You know, it's just we're going to lose clubs this season, and we moan about Bury. We've lost Macclesfield, which seems to have been like, oh well, that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's been actually shocking, actually.
Yeah,
how little coverage that's got.
And their ground's up for sale.
Yeah,
their ground's up for sale on Rightmove, unbelievable for 500,000 or above. But we can't lose these clubs. Like, I don't like Macclesfield anyway, because I went there and we lost 4-0 one year, and I don't like them because of it. That's just my mental. That's my mood. But it was 4-0 and I didn't like it. But we can't see. I know, you see how fickle I am. But we can't lose these clubs, and we can't lose these clubs and just go, oh, that's another one. It's crazy. We shouldn't be losing any clubs.
No, 100%. There are clubs, for example, Fleetwood Town, that I'll be very interested to see what their financial projections are based on how they work on small crowds and huge investment from their chairman, their owner, Andy Pilley. But it was nice to get one over them, at least in a sporting sense, on Saturday. Talk about big numbers, Stu. 42 is a big number for a squad number. What's that about? We need to ask Steve Seddon why he's gone for 42. Don't know.
Oh,
is that your age? Well, I'm being generous, actually.
I was going to say, I'll take that.
I was going to say, yeah, blimey.
I'll take that. I don't know. What number did he... I can't remember what number he come
15,
in on.
I think.
So it doesn't even add up to that, does it? 4 and 2.
Unless it's something to do with the number 6, where he likes to add the digits together for some reason, and he can't have the number 6, I don't know. But 42.
Yeah, it did seem weird. Look, John, he done well. I said to you, I didn't think we needed him. And that wasn't me being just... again, it's my attitude of, do we need another player? We had 2 left-backs at the time. However, from a football point of view, he come in and he had a storming debut, didn't he? He added that left. I thought we were good at left back anyway. Comes in, first game, scores a winner. There you go, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It was a great performance.
What was lost, and we mentioned it briefly in the post game we did on YouTube on Saturday. We will talk more about Steve Seddon and his impact. What was lost in the goal, which was a great winning goal, was the fact it was a counter-attack goal. And it started with our goalkeeper.
Yep.
Obviously, we'd worked on this in training, or at least we'd had that idea in mind to try and break quickly where we could. Truman was so alert. He collected a loose ball over the top. He was off his line to collect. And first thought, immediately get the ball back moving into play, into Steve Seddon, try and exploit some of the space that would have been left, and Seddon exploited the space. Played a couple of 1-2s. The final one was with Joe Piggott. Joe Piggott's been excellent at the start of the season. We mentioned another assist for him.
Yeah.
Seddon's basically run the length of the pitch to end up scoring that goal. And it's not to say that Nesta or Paul Osu wouldn't have the energy to do that as well. Of course they would do. Would they have made the run into the box the way Seddon did? Would their minds have been that way attuned? I don't know.
Not sure. Nesta did it, didn't he, against Oxford when he got... Was it Oxford? No. It was Oxford, wasn't it? I can't remember. Plymouth. He scored somewhere. I can't remember.
Oh, no, hold on. He scored at Northampton. But then he set up Shane McLaughlin against Plymouth. Yeah.
That's right. So he did that. Do you know what's interesting, right, with Conal Truman? I've got this feeling, I think any player that's joined us and the fans have not seen in real life, i.e. have not seen at a game, I personally think they're struggling to connect with them. Conal Truman's got a lot of grief, but his actual distribution, a lot of times he comes to the edge of his area, gets the ball, and his first action, we work on it, get players wide. Our wing-backs are our strongest people. But even to the extent, the reason I think this is because when Steve Seddon come back, there was a big outro. Everyone was really happy. Oh, yeah, Steve Seddon, because we've got that connection. And I think that's why Conal Truman's getting a lot more grief than he normally does. No one can live up to Rambo. No one can live up to that. But I seriously think that's the problem. We can't connect with these players because we're not seeing them. Steve Seddon gets a hero welcome, gets the goal, great stuff. And I think that's the difficulty, and I understand it. I fully understand it. So I don't think Conal's that bad, although my mate did message me. It's funny, he was watching the game on iPhone and he said, what have you got your youth goalkeeper in goal? He looks like 15. And I did look and think, he is quite small. He is quite small for a goalkeeper. But his distribution is very, very good.
He thought Conal Truman looks young. Did he see Nathan Trott last year? Because Nathan Trott, in comparison, did actually look like a teenager when he was. But yeah, anyway, it was a good game for Truman as a whole. Made a couple of good saves. But I thought it was going to be 0-0, to be honest with you. I think the goal lit up. If it had finished 0-0, I think it probably would have been a fair reflection, to be honest with you. But it was a good defensive performance from us, similar in vein to the Oxford game, where we were hard to break down. Fleetwood liked to play football the same way Oxford did, and they just couldn't figure out how to get past us and break us down and get in behind, and they never got in behind. And that makes such a difference. And we've seen that sort of performance from us a lot down the years, actually. I've always said we're very well organised defensively. Whoever's been in charge, whether it be Neil or Wally or Glim, if you set up a team to keep their shape and make it difficult for teams to break us down, we've always done well with that. Individual errors has just been our biggest undoing over the last few seasons in a defensive sense. We had the benefit of actually getting our noses in front, and I'm not sure if we can add anything to that. I guess the only difference being there was a change in midfield, wasn't there? We played Oxanen came in for Ethan Chislett, and we were a bit more defensive with that three.
Yeah, do you know what? I think Oxanen didn't get loads of coverage, but the job he done was brilliant. I really like the way we're setting up, and I think you're right. You hit it on the head about the shape. The shape is very good now. So if you play Oxanen, Riley and Woodyard in that free central area, they're biting the heels of everybody. I literally on everybody and hunting in groups. And then behind that, you've got a free centre half. So we don't play too deep. We do play quite high. So actually, we stifle a lot of stuff. So teams that are going to want to play football against us this year are going to struggle because we are going to stifle them out. Our wing backs are our biggest threat. Our wing backs are very high. And the funny thing was, I was looking at the areas of play. So where did we play the most? We actually played the least in the penalty area, the attacking penalty area. So we actually don't have forwards that want to stay in the area. Joe Pigott goes out wide left, gets the ball, plays it back into Seddon. Seddon's got 4 or 5 players around him. He's a wing back in that side of it. So I think the shape's very good, and Glyn's now got players in that can play that system. Our wing backs are very strong. You know, we brought Che Alexander in. He can't get a look in now because Shane McLaughlin is just making that right wing back position his own. And we dropped Ethan. We dropped Ethan Chislett. Nothing that he's done wrong. It just suited the way we play against Fleetwood. And Joey Barton got really frustrated, didn't he, with it all? And I can just say there's a funny quote that he's got in one of the papers. He basically said that he's struggling this year. He's playing a lot of young players because they don't have the financial clout they used to have. Our average age was 24. His average age was 27.
He's talking nonsense.
He's just using excuses, isn't he?
I find that very difficult to believe because we know the size, we know the quality they have in that squad. We mentioned it, and the players they've still got there. They've still got Josh Morris. They've still got Ched Evans. They've still got Paddy Madden. Level. They've bought in Glenn Whelan. I mean, give me a break.
They've got some quality players.
Talking nonsense. Anyway. Best week? Who had the best week then? You've mentioned 3 players there that were standouts. If you had to pick one, who would it be?
I'm going to go for Conor Truman purely because he got a clean sheet. That'll give him such confidence. So I'm going to go for Steve Seddon. Sorry, Steve Seddon. Conor Truman. The thing is, listeners, what you don't understand is the fact that I thought Stu was pulling a funny there by saying Truman, so that's why I'm going for Seddon. But then because I can see Stu on Zoom, his face was one of, no, that's that. And then the realisation dawned that he'd said the wrong name. Hey, Conor Truman.
Hey, look, we can edit this out and no one will ever know. Just
no, it's more, people are used to me mucking up, so I'll just leave it in.
Fair enough. There's no worst week. To be fair, this week is almost impossible. You could argue somebody that is not getting in the team right now and is maybe going to struggle to get their way back into the team, but it's a long season. It's still early days, so it might be unfair to go with that on that line of thinking just yet.
Yeah. If I was going to say one, probably Ethan Chislett, just for the fact of that he probably thinking, what have I got? What have I done wrong? He's done nothing wrong. It's just the way we're going to play, and he's going to have to get used to that.
We did have some 3-word reports on Twitter at 9YRS Podcast. Lots of responses to this, so I'm very sorry if I don't read yours out. Well, I'm going to not read out more than I read out. But I liked Yatesy at Yatesy 1974, unbeaten since February. Very nice. I mean, we did get knocked out on penalties by Oxford in the League Cup. So
we didn't lose that, though, did we?
We didn't lose the over 90 minutes, no. But, yeah. Ray Armfield making... Not only a 3-word report's making their return to the podcast, Ray Armfield's 3-word report is making a return to the podcast. At Kent Womble, he's gone for the first The Truman Show of the season, and I'm sure there'll be many of those as we go on. Luke McKenzie of the Dons Trust Board, at Lukey Boy Mac, all said and done.
Oh, that's quite clever for him. He's not that clever, is he? He's done well there.
I look forward to seeing his response to you on that one. Michael at Shepzillion Seddon for president. And then my final one from Ross Cole at Ross Cole Smith simply says, "Up yours, franchise." Nothing to do with the Fleetwood victory, but a statement.
You can leave that all season.
Exactly. A statement that remains true every single second of every minute of every hour of every day. Thank you for those. Look out for those again after the Accrington game on Saturday. We were going to preview that one, Stu. Let's do that now before we get onto Plough Lane. Accrington Stanley is our next fixture, as I mentioned, at Loftus Road on Saturday. They have started the season with 2 defeats and a win, although the win was against Peterborough, so it was a good win. They lost 4-1 at home to Oxford last week, although the last 2 goals came when Accrington were down to 10 men after Dion Charles was sent off. I mentioned earlier they have a smaller squad this year, high turnover of players. They've let a lot go. They've not brought that many in, although they have got some loans in. Ryan Cassidy has come from Watford on loan. So really, trading in Watford for Accrington Stanley is a massive improvement. So Ryan will probably sign for them permanently, I'd imagine, when he realises he's at a much bigger, better club. They have lost Jordan Clark to an even bigger and better club in Luton. But they brought Cameron Burgess in from Scunthorpe, who I always thought was a decent centre-half. I thought that seemed like a solid acquisition, yeah.
Yeah, no, well, not give too much away because, just let you know, obviously back to Plough Lane Live starts on Saturday from Loftus Road, and we've got quite a long build-up to that. But what I would say, they bought, I can't remember what his name is now, it's a difficult name to pronounce, so let's try and get used to it. But their number 14 is on loan from Chelsea under 23s, plays wide left, scored second goal against Peterborough, right foot into the top corner. And if you look at all their attacks, they go down the left-hand side. He's heavily involved in everything, very athletic. They play a 3-5-2 as well. I'm noticing, it's interesting this season, I'm noticing a lot of teams are playing 3-5-2, as if that's the... Do you remember, like, as you go through the years, there always seems to be like a formation that somewhere comes back out. You know, remember the false 9? Oh, everyone plays a false 9 now, and stuff like that. We used to play attackers, that's why we had a false 9. But yeah, their strengths are the left-hand side, but they're scoring goals. Oxford, to be fair, Matty Taylor got a couple of goals against them. That's not a surprise. Oxford are a decent team. But yeah, you know what I'm going to say? I think we're going to win comfortably on Saturday. I really do. They're not in great form. If we can deal with their threats, I think we'll win comfortably.
Tariq Uwakwi, I believe, is how you pronounce that name. It's the youngster from Chelsea. They've also got on loan from Newcastle another youngster, Tom Allen, who you might have seen. He's a comedian. You might have seen him on such shows as The Apprentice, You're Fired, or 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown. I'm sure it's exactly the same person. They also have a young defender, Ben Barkley, who I bank on him scoring on the weekend.
I think, just very quick, I think Accrington do well with their loanees. I think it's because clubs send them to Accrington because if you can survive living in Accrington, you can survive anywhere. It's like getting away from the big city, isn't it? But they do well on their loans. They get some really good loans. And that's where they're going to stay up this year, is their things on a loan system. But yeah, good luck to Accrington. I hope they stay up.
They've also got Tom Scully, who makes me think of The X-Files, and Colby Bishop, who is very religious. John Coleman, big part of their success is the fact they've got a lot of continuity. Yes, he took a couple of years out, probably like 5-6 years ago now. He went to Rochdale and other places, but in reality, he's been their manager for the last 20 years. And I think that consistency always helps when you're a small club and you are... You know, you have a way of doing things that runs right through the whole club. So he's done a fantastic job there. A scoreline for Saturday?
I fancy a 3-0 win.
Wow, that's confidence.
We're scoring goals.
I will say 3-1. I will say we won't get another clean sheet, but we'll go for 3-1. But I'm also wary that Accrington won't want to concede more. They'll probably tighten things up after what happened last week. So be mindful of that one. Coverage, as Stu says, will be on Facebook. Back to Plough Lane live from Loftus Road with pre-match and post-match conversation. Check that out on social media and Twitter updates at 9YRS Podcast as well. The other thing we're going to talk about this week before we get onto our game, Plough Lane. So finally, a date has been given for our first game at Plough Lane. It will be November the 3rd when we host Doncaster Rovers. Doncaster, I think, were the first opponents for Brighton at their new stadium a few years ago. So they seem to have. I think there was somebody else as well. I'm going to research this whilst I do this. You probably hear me typing away on my laptop as I'm researching things, listeners. But November the 3rd could be March, though, before fans are allowed into the stadium. Stu, what are your views on November the 3rd? Because I put a tweet out the other day that said, for me, our first game at Plough Lane is not the first game until we actually have supporters in the stadium and it's full, because a stadium without fans, what's the point of having a stadium if you've got no fans in it? And I think that, for me, means that the big the big event, the big occasion will be whenever the stadium is sold out for a first time. November the 3rd will be purely for the significance, the historical significance of actually playing a game at Plough Lane. But without fans, especially at our club of all clubs, there's an emptiness that comes with it.
It is. It was a bittersweet. We're going to be fortunate this year in terms of we're doing it back to Plough Lane, which is going to be a live pre-match, post-match on the club website. So we are going to be one of the fortunate ones that are going to be at a game. But as I was saying before that, I've been to the Loftus Road for the 4-4 game at Plymouth, and I was at the Brighton game. It's just a horrible experience. And I know I don't want to say that as being ungrateful, but it isn't the same without fans. And just as much as it's great that Plough Lane is going to be ready, it's not going to be a home game until I find it really difficult to comprehend what it's going to be like in terms of new ground. We've all been waiting for so long to go back to Plough Lane, and we can't get in there. It's a mind F word. I don't know. I'm just struggling to understand it all. And you're right. In an ideal world, we would share somewhere else and only go to Plough Lane when we're ready. But we're not in an ideal world because finances dictate it. And it's ours. It's ours. It looks so lovely. I feel like Plough Lane has just had a jinx on it the whole way through, in terms of the cost of it. Boris Johnson deciding to call it in. There's so many things it's like we want to get home and we were working so hard, but people are just trying to put stuff in the way of it the whole way through, and this is just one more of it. But yeah, it's going to be a weird one. There does seem to be a lot of work going on behind the scenes from every level in the game, so the English Premier League, the Football League, the non-league, of trying to get crowds back in. I understand there's a lot of pressure on the government on that, and it might come forward. The problem is we don't know with COVID how it's going to go. Can you get? Is it right to think about getting people into grounds when the virus is second wave again? But we can't keep living like this. We've said this all along, haven't we? We've got to get back. It's bittersweet. It's bittersweet. It does look lovely though. Let's be fair. It looks a lovely ground.
The speckled seats was definitely the correct option. So thank you very much, fans of Milton Keynes, that are trying to say that that's your doing, that you messed up our stadium somehow by voting for it on the vote. No, that was the correct choice. And it looks amazing. You are right, Stu, this ground has felt cursed at every step of the way. It was built, of course, on an ancient Indian burial ground. And then after that, it was then turned into a toxic waste dump. So who knows what other fates might befall us at Plough Lane. We might get a giant dog or a fire in the aroma room that we're going to build at the stadium. Anyway, if you don't get those references, don't worry. We had a query about the new stadium from Jabir Belmidi, who said, why is the club not considering opening up the bars to generate some revenue before crowds can attend matches? This is an interesting shout.
Oh.
First one's going to be, we don't know if they are or not, because the bars will not be in place yet. Whether they will be in place for the 3rd of November now, I assume they will, because I assume the finished completion date for the build was something like the 25th of October, so I'm assuming that means everything. But would that be allowed? How would that work? Could we screen the game and have tables of 6 if you wish and can do? I don't know. Is it something you think the club would do? Or do you think the COVID restrictions and the whole thing around not having fans at stadiums would put the kibosh on that one? If you're going to do it, I suppose you need to have people committing to attending beforehand and probably having some form of ticket, I'd imagine.
Yeah. So Joe Palmer was on the Dons Trust, is it SGM or AGM that they had last Wednesday just gone. I did say that they're looking at the possibility that it should be ready. The club shop should be ready for commercial stuff, and the pub. I don't know if you looked in the papers at the crazy situation with Willstone, who are able to show their game in their ground. They've got a a function room or something at their grounds. They're going to stream the game live to that room, that pub, whatever it is, in the ground. They've got to shut the curtains so that people can't look at the game, but they're going to be in the ground, in their function room, and the game's going to be going on around side them. It's the most craziest story I've ever heard.
Oh yeah, there's so many things with code and
it's ridiculous.
Rules and regulations and inconsistencies across the board, isn't there? It's difficult to know exactly what's what and what makes sense, if anything.
I'm really interested though, because I don't know what this pub is going to be like. So when you say pub, for those of the old people, you won't be that old, Nick. But everyone, so you won't remember the Sportsman at Plough Lane. So that was a pub. That was a pub right near, the entrance where they all went in. So when I hear pub, I think, is it going to be like that? It's not. It's going to be inside the ground, I think near where the fan zone is. It's really difficult to understand what it's going to be like, how spacious it's going to be. I think the club will do what they can. I think the club shop will be open. I'm hearing a lot of people already that say they're going to be at the ground, regardless whether they can get in on that night. They're going to be outside celebrating it and stuff like that, and I fully get that. I don't know, mate. I don't know. This Welsh just crazy, I don't know what's going on.
If we can do it, Jabir, it would be a great idea. And as Stu says, Joe Palmer will probably make some announcements close to the time and see what can be arranged. Stu, you've mentioned Fan Zone there. I've just realised what Boy Zone was all about. It's Boy Zone. I've only just realised that. Like, I don't know what I didn't know what I thought before, if I thought anything before. But it's a zone of boys, which, I mean, we had. I don't want to talk myself into so much trouble. We had a little laugh at the commentator on Fleetwood on Saturday, keep referring to their player called Boys, and all the horrendous puns that were made on that name. But yeah, Boy's Own. It makes sense.
Do you want me to explain what E17 were when they were a boy band?
Yes, no, I'm not an idiot, Stu. That was because there were 17 of them from Japan. Whose 9 is it anyway? Let's get this out of the way because we've been talking far too long. This week, Stu, the number I've chosen is unlucky for some. It is the number 13.
Oh,
don't know why I picked that, but yeah, why
that's
not?
a good one. If you give me the year that I want.
Okay, all right. Well, the first.
I mean, because we know what the 13 used to be, didn't we, in the olden days?
Well, we did, and I'm going to start with 1995-96.
So it's got to be a goalkeeper because that was always what it was, wasn't it? 13s. What year? 95, 96?
Yeah.
Seegers would have just gone by there. Sully would have been in. You haven't given me Paul Hill, have you?
Is that your guess?
Yeah, I think it would have been him.
Okay. 2010, 2011.
Oh, that's difficult. So it wouldn't have been a goal. Would it have been a goalkeeper? 2010, 2011. Would it have been Warner? I can't remember who reserve goalkeeper was then at that time. I'll go for Warner.
Ross Warner, yeah?
Sorry, yeah, Ross Warner.
Okay. And then this season, who's number 13?
You're having a laugh. This season, Rudy was 12, 13. Not him. I don't know, I'm trying to think now. Is it Rudy? I'm going for Jack Rodoni, but I think he was 12.
I can tell you, Stu, this week you have got 1 out of 3.
Ooh.
It was Paul Heald in 95,
yeah,
96. I am told, Kevin Boris told me the other day, that the old club call referred to him as Paul Held when he first signed. So we got into a conversation because he mentioned this. He said the club call referred to him as Paul Held, to which I said, that's a pretty good name for a goalkeeper. It would make sense. He said apparently in 1978, the French substitute goalkeeper for the World Cup was called Dominic Dropsy, which is a terrible name for a goalkeeper. But then, as I pointed out, in France, it doesn't mean anything. So the French wouldn't care what it was called. And then I thought it'd be quite funny if, when a certain Ben Wilson was with us, if our manager might have gone to him, Ben, do you know what? You remind me of a French international goalkeeper. And he'd have been, oh, Fabien Barthez. But no, Dominic Dropsy.
Wasn't Wilson the name of the ball that Tom Hanks had on the Castaway, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
So maybe just Wilson wanted his own ball. Certainly needed it. No one else wanted to take it from him.
He didn't seem to like footballs, ironically.
Strange that.
He didn't want to go anywhere near them. Right, 2010, 2011, Chris Bush.
Wouldn't got that.
Was number 13 the year we got promoted
This
from
season.
the conference. And then this season, Stu, Nick Zanev.
Oh, it's a goalkeeper. What a div.
It's a goalkeeper.
Just something is in my head. I just sometimes thought it was an old thing that used to happen and don't happen now. It still does.
It still does, but actually those are the only three players I could find that wore a number 13 with us. So I don't think it's a popular number with
I wonder why.
Wimbledon FC or AFC Wimbledon. Anyway, that is it. Thank you, Stu, for joining me. That is it for this week.
Cool.
Thank everybody. I can't even get my words out now. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Don't forget, as we've mentioned, Back to Powering Live on Saturday from about 2:00 and post-match as well from the game with Accrington Stanley. Twitter updates at 9YRS Podcast, and bonus and early access content available on our Patreon, patreon.com/9YRS Podcast. Other than that, that is all we have this week. Thank you for joining us. Alexa Bliss, bag first, milk last, 2 + 2 = 4. We will speak to you again next Friday. Goodbye.